7 o'clock down at Expo. They've got the great market going on outside. It's going to be a total experience that is fueled by this wonderful community of folks that nationally love basketball, kind of like no other culture does. So get on down to the Expo Center, enjoy the game, go to stingers.ca, get your tickets if you haven't got them already. And Jordan, best of luck, not just, of course, with the game against Scarborough tonight, but also for the remainder of the season. And we'll be talking to you soon, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right. Jordan Baker, head everything for the Edmonton Stingers, joining me today here on Hoop City with Paul Sir. Welcome to the Deep Dive on Hoop City with Paul Sir. I'm pleased to be joined once again by the voice of the Indiana Fever, Pat Boylan. Pat, welcome. So glad to have you on.
Good to be with you. Good to be back.
Pat, the Fever are 7-5. It's been what I would call, from the outside looking in, an interesting beginning to the season. Kind of uneven would be one way to put it, but the Fever at times, and what I would say, again, an observation, Pat, would be, it seems with more frequency, seem to be settling into role definition, people doing things that we expect them to do, and finding some sort of chemistry. Is that an accurate summary?
I think that's probably right. You know, if you look at where this team is right now and what it's searching for, I mean, far and away, answer number one to that question is consistency. And you only need to look at the last 3 games to understand that. In New York, 12-point lead, late third quarter, the Fever lose it and lose the game. Then in D.C. a couple nights later, 17-point third quarter lead, the Fever lose that advantage. They win the game on that iconic Caitlin Clark 3-point shot. It was an unbelievable moment from an unbelievable player. At the end of the day, though, you don't want to have to need that moment, right? I mean, you're up 17 in the second half. That's the type of game you should win 99% of the time. And then, fast forward to Thursday night, the next game. So I'm talking about 3 straight games here for the Fever. Indiana has a 19-point second quarter lead, loses that as well, goes down by 6, reclaims the lead, is up by 5 in the final 9 seconds, loses that lead, and then wins it in overtime. Now, going 2-1 in those games is not bad at all, especially when you consider caliber of opponent and 2 of those 3 being on the road. But you want to close those out without needing overtime, without needing Caitlin Clark heroics. An interesting stat I was just looking at before I came on with you. The Fever have led by double digits in 75% of their games this year, 9 of 12. That number was 61% a year ago. And remember, this is a team a year ago that didn't have Caitlin Clark for most of the year, but did finish 24-20 and did make that run, to a game away from the WNBA Finals. So it's a number that is well above last year's total, which I think is a promising sign. Anybody that's listened to my segments on your show over the years knows that I'm a glass half full guy, and I'll continue to be one here. I think if you play a course of a season anywhere near having 75% of your games where you lead by double digits, you're going to love where you end up. But for the time being, to lose a 12-point second half lead, a 17-point second half lead, and a 19-point lead in 3 straight games is something that is, I would say, kind of a yellow flag concerning, because those are games where you should be closing them out and not needing the heroics at the end. But importantly as well, the flip side of that coin is the Fever have gotten it done, gotten the win in 2 of those 3. Because if you lose, these 2 games that you've won, then you're talking about a 5-7 team, and you're not just talking about struggle for consistency, but you're talking about a team that's probably in 10th and has dug itself into a fairly significant early season hole. So significant that they were able to get the wins despite it. But I said said, kind of closing out our broadcast last night, the to-do list for Stephanie White, despite winning these last 2 games, may have grown. But at the same time, you get those 2 wins. You have some great Caitlin Clark moments along the way. Aaliyah Boston was brilliant on Thursday, too. Those 2 combined for 66 points, and each of them had a double-double, which is the first time 2 teammates have had a 30-point double-double in a game in WNBA history. So you're gaining a lot here, and you're learning a lot of positive things. But holding leads and consistency are still, big boxes that still need to be checked from this team.
It's an interesting theme too, Pat, because with all of the attention being the spotlight being shown on the Knicks' 29-point comeback to win Game 4 in the NBA, I think there's a lot of people who are maybe not crazy basketball fans who are going, how in the world can you have such big leads and find a way or be part of a comeback where you actually lose a game like that? And now you're seeing a pattern with the Fever in terms of losing big leads. So to that point, Pat, here's my question for you. What is it that, from your vantage point in the broadcast booth, that you're seeing that's happening that causes these leads to evaporate? Are there a couple of factors that stand out to your eye?
I think so, and I want to say this: the Knicks Spurs Game 4 is maybe unlike anything I've ever seen. We're sitting here talking about having a 12-point lead late in the third quarter versus New York at New York. I mean, that's wildly different than what we experienced. Right. I mean, a 29-point lead should be game over, unquestioned. I will say, as somebody that considers himself moderately intelligent in basketball, I don't know how to explain that. I don't know how, if you look at where the Spurs were at halftime, and then you would have given them the foresight and said, you will need 32 second half points. You scored 76 in the first half. You need 32 in the second half to win Game 4, and you can't pull that off. That, to me, is beyond comprehension. What we're talking about with the Fever is a glass half full, glass half empty trend, which is they're doing a great job of building these leads, which, again, I think ultimately will prove to be more positive than the negative of losing them. But it's certainly something that they've got to figure out here, because if you continue to do this, I mean, and you put these games up to overtime into last second shots, you're not going to consistently win those. The Fever have won the last 2, but you're not going to consistently win games like that. So, I think there's some natural, you take your foot off the gas a little bit, you build these leads, and there's just a natural inclination. It's human nature to say, okay, we've accomplished something here. And I'm not saying, the Fever are saying, okay, we're good, game over. I'm not saying that at all. I just think there's a natural inclination of when you get down, the opponent says, okay, we got to punch back. And maybe you're not quite as much on the offensive. And I think that's a little bit of what's going on here. I think defensive consistency for this team has been something that they've really been searching for. Now, as I'm talking to you here, the Fever rank 4th defensively in the WNBA 15-team league here through 12 games. If you would have told me that when we had our season preview conversation, I would have been jumping in the air for glee. I mean, I am so pleasantly surprised that the Fever are 4th defensively, but it's kind of come in games where it seems like they're either giving up like 72 or 95. It's not necessarily been a consistent 4th place defensively, but at the end of the day, you can't argue with results. I think the defense has been better than expected, which is great, but at times, including, I think this game against Chicago on Thursday, probably the most extreme example, because you go from up 19 to down 6. The first quarter, the Fever gave up 14 points. Now, you're not going to keep doing that. But in the third quarter, they gave up 39 points. So if you talk about the course of a game and you say you give up 14 points in the first quarter, if you were to do that over 4 quarters, you'd hold Chicago to 56 points. That would be a stunningly low number. If you give up 39 in all 4 quarters, you give up 156 over the course of a game, and that's setting all sorts of WNBA records. I'm talking extremes here, but it kind of underscores my point. Those 2 quarters happened in the same game, 14 and 39. The fourth quarter was good. They held Chicago under 20. The second quarter was not so good, 26 points. And again, for people who are more used to the NBA game, remember, these are 10-minute quarters versus 12. So when you're talking about 39, that's with 2 less minutes than in an NBA quarter. But at the same time, 14 is very, very good, no matter how you look at it. So I think there's a little bit of human nature of taking your foot off the gas just a little bit. I think some of it, too, is you have to give the opponents credit. I think the Fever have faced 3 teams that have been really motivated. New York, with some injuries at the beginning of the season, got off to a start that they weren't thrilled with. You look at Washington, they're certainly below where they hope they would be this season, and Chicago too. So you have 3 really motivated teams to, when you see a deficit like this, to get back into it because they're trying to fix things desperately as well. So I think there's some opponent credit that goes into the formula, but I think defensive consistency is the thing this team is looking for as much as anything. If you look at the bottom line of all of it, it's quite good. But, not having games where you have a 14-point quarter and then a couple later you give up 39. I think that kind of consistency level has to improve for this Fever team, despite the fact that, again, the defense is, I would say, ahead of where I expected it to be when you just look at defensive rating.
I'm talking to Pat Boylan. He is the voice of the Indiana Fever here on Hoop City with Paul Sir. A couple of observations that I have as an old-time basketball guy, Pat, and trying to relate styles of play and eras together and see patterns unfold over history to lead us to where we are now, where these wild swings can occur. And a couple of observations I have, and I would put this with the Fever, but I'll refer to the Knicks, Spurs. First off, the Spurs in the second half, and I've read all the analytics and all the analysis of it, but where my conclusions come down, and again, the correlation is to any team, I think, that has a big lead that they then surrender later in the game. Ebbs and flows, quality of competition, as you mentioned, very, very high. Games are 40 minutes, not 1 quarter. So you're going to have those changes, those waves throughout the game. Having said that, the pace of play and the willingness, I think, of teams to play one style almost exclusively, which is fast pace, heavy emphasis on the 3, as opposed to a methodical approach. And you saw that in the Spurs the other night. How doubt crept in because they, again, were going back to the well after a phenomenal first half of shooting, just appearing to think that they're going to just shoot threes and win the game going away. When that didn't happen, when the basket goes from looking the size of a rain barrel to the size of a putting green cup, I mean, when those things happen, then at that point, adjustments have to be made in terms of style of play and pace of play. And I think in watching a lot of big comebacks, that's where I think that's one of the factors I think teams really struggle with, is they try to do the same things over and over and over again, even when they're not working. And the heavy reliance on the 3 is, to me, the beacon of that. Now, with the Fever the other night, like you said, you have a magnificent performance from Boston, or performances from Boston and from Clark, but also Kelsey Mitchell, really great night. 19-3 and 3 steals, like 3 assists, 3 steals. You're getting this 3-headed chemistry starting to come together. And as they figure out the defensive side of things and how to calm these big wild swings down, that really bodes well over a 40-plus game season, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think over the course of time, what you're seeing is going to lead to more positivity than negativity.
Exactly.
If, for as much as anything, even though the Fever are struggling to close out these leads and to hold them, time tells you that if you continue to get leads like this, it's going to end well for you. The Spurs Knicks exam. I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head on what's happening. The reliance on the 3-point shot and just the drastic variance that you see because of the 3-point shot. One team gets hot there, another team doesn't, and you have leads that can evaporate very quickly. I still contest that I don't know how to explain 29 points in the second half. I know how to explain 12, 17, and 19. I don't know how to explain 29. That's just in a completely different realm of impossibility to understand for me. I mean, the shot chart for the Spurs, I don't even want to look at it. I'm sure it's dreadful in the second half, and I was just struck by how rarely Victor Wembanyama was around the rim in the second half, and how they couldn't get him there, or they weren't trying to get him there, or they were being stubborn, or I don't know what it was, but it was painful to watch. As somebody that wants that series to go long, the comeback was dramatic and exciting. But as somebody that wants that series to go 7, just selfishly, it was hard. It was really hard to watch. I mean, it was almost painful to watch, as exciting as it was. From the Fever perspective, I think as the game continues to evolve, you're already seeing this. I mean, you're seeing way more big comebacks in the NBA and the WNBA now than you did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, certainly 15, 20 years ago. That's going to continue. And some of it, I think, myself included here, requires a little bit of rewiring on how you view these comebacks. Because my first year with the Pacers and the Fever was the 2014-2015 season. A 20-point comeback was a once-in-a-5-year thing. Now, it's probably a 2 or 3 times a year thing over an 82-game schedule. I'm not saying necessarily coming back from 20 and winning the game, but having a 15 to 20-point lead erased in the NBA seems to be something that happens, I don't know, maybe once every 30 games now versus once every few years. So a lot of that is the change of style of the game. More pace equals more possessions, more 3 variance equals more weirdness. And I think a lot of this is very true. Yeah, I think a lot of this is very true for the Fever as well. In a vacuum, losing a 12-point lead, losing a 17-point lead, losing a 19-point lead, you don't want to do it, of course. But in a vacuum, it's going to happen. I would be willing to bet in the WNBA, every team that wins at least 40% of their games will lose a 15-point lead at some point in the season. For the Fever, it's just that it's happened 3 straight times. I think that's what you're kind of circling right now. Any of those individually are disappointing, but not really all that concerning. 3 in a row, I will still contest. I will take the positive of getting those leads over the negative of losing them, especially when you've ultimately won 2 of the 3 games. But when it's 3 in a row, it's something certainly to look at, and you want to avoid the here we go again type of scenario where if the Fever get that big lead again, they'll be in Connecticut on Saturday, the team with the worst record in the league. You'd like to think they could get a double-digit lead there. If they can, and Connecticut starts to make a run, you hope that the oh boy, here we go again doesn't creep in. And so that mental side of things, I think, is important to get quashed here early. But we are just over a quarter of the way into the season. So, there's a whole lot still to figure out, I think, for most teams. And overall, it's been an up and down start to the season. If you ask me where I would like the Fever to be through 12 games, I would probably say 8-4 would be a fair number to shoot for. They're 7-5. So, despite all of the noise that tends to follow this team right now, they're maybe 1 game behind where I kind of hope they'd be at this point, and 32 to go. So still a long, long way to go in this season, and a lot to be written in this chapter of Fever basketball.
Welcome back to Hoop City. Paul Sir, along with Declan Kruger, joining you on this gorgeous Saturday morning in Edmonton, Alberta. We are talking. I had the pleasure of talking with Pat Boylan yesterday, and having had many conversations with Pat over the years about the Pacers and about the Fever, and now, of course, with the WNBA being in full swing, having the opportunity to talk about the franchise really that garners the most attention in the WNBA and is largely responsible for the increased ratings because of the presence of Caitlin Clark, but also the other factors that go into the coaching, the team, the organization, etc. Great conversation. So here's the last part of my chat with Pat Boylan. Pat Boylan, voice of the Indiana Pacers and Fever, joining me here on the Hoop City with Pulsar Deep Dive. Pat, I want one final thought on that, and then I do want to touch on the noise that follows this team, as you pointed out. It's great on one hand, two positive outcomes of these last three games. Number one, it's happening early in the season, so a pattern unfolds now that can be addressed over the course of the season, as opposed to showing up in the playoffs. Hopefully it won't show up again then, but this gives you the opportunity to adapt, adjust, identify, and put strategies in to offset that. That's number one. And number two, everybody will forget about the comebacks later on in the year, and you've got those two W's on your side, as opposed, like you said, to being 5-7. Being 7-5 is very, very different. So that in and of itself, after all, the W's are what counts. How you get there, you have the chance now to grow as a team and come together and be able to address what you need to do to protect and build on leads that you build up in the game. Going to the noise. You're absolutely right, and I was trying to think of of some phraseology that I think is respectfully accurate in terms of the noise that follows this team. And here's again an outsider observation. It's social media fueled controversy.
No question.
That's what you're dealing with. Everything about the Fever is normal. You're a basketball team. You have your you have your personalities, internals, ups and downs, all of those things. It's been a thoughtfully assembled roster. You've got tremendous star power, all kinds of reasons to love this team. But social media fueled controversy is just like this. Dawson nipping at the Fever's heels, yelping the whole time, trying to make something up and trying to create issues that I'm sure there are issues. Every team has them, but most of this is social media fueled noise.
You're absolutely correct. And I want to say, and I want to preface any comments that I make here with this statement right here. As somebody that took over the full-time Fever play-by-play job in 2018, from 2018 through 2022, probably even 2023, the Fever were the worst record in probably any major North American sports. I've experienced a season where the field house was shut down due to renovations, and we were playing in an alternate location, and the Fever were 5-31, and there were less than 1,000 people that were in attendance. And so please understand when I make any of these comments that we are so unbelievably fortunate and lucky just a few years later to be filling Gainbridge Fieldhouse, to be a major sports storyline, and really to be the epicenter of women's basketball across the country. I am forever exceedingly grateful to get to have this role and to have a seat on the bus. And some of the irony of all of this is I have never in my life interacted with a professional athlete who is more professional or better with a microphone in front of her than Caitlin Clark. She's just tremendous. 100%. She's outstanding. She never says the wrong thing. It's unbelievable at her age that she continues to be as profound and well-spoken as she is. I'm in awe of it every single day. The other thing is, and I truly believe this, somewhere, in my opinion, between 95 and 99% of fans are not the quote unquote noise, especially the fans that are truly Caitlin Clark fans are not the noise. Many of them, a majority of them, are not on social media. So you don't hear from them in the first place. Many of them are on social media. I don't want to get into a deep dive about how the algorithm works on Twitter, but if I post a picture of something non-controversial, or a tweet at something non-controversial, and then I post something very controversial, the algorithm says, well, I can get people to interact with the controversial statement. And so I'm going to pump that into everybody's feed in America. And so social media has a horrible way of amplifying the biggest and most controversial posts, which, again, I don't want to get down this rabbit hole, but there's a political aspect at play that goes well above this, that I believe why, some of our politics are so divided these days is a very similar reason for all of that. So I think what ends up happening is you get whatever the percentage is, somewhere between the 1% to 4% of fans that are stirring the pot. But social media gives them a pot that is 10 times the size of their voice, which makes things seem a lot worse than they are.
Exactly.
But as we know, perception is reality. What we experience is reality. And so, yeah, I mean, the amount Howard Megdal is a longtime women's basketball writer, and he just came out with a column a couple of days ago that I encourage anybody to read because I think it was very well written, just on, trying to navigate all of this and kind of trying to get to the bottom of the controversies, and I mean, some of the just wild conspiracies that are out there. I truly believe most of them are a combination of social media giving the biggest voice to the loudest and most controversial people, and then also many of those people not actually being fans of Caitlin Clark or the Fever, but using the spotlight around her and this team to push whatever agenda they might feel like they have to push. The other aspect of it is when you've got a fan base this large and coverage that is this broad, even 1% of this big of a group of people is a massive amount of people, which in a weird way is kind of cool when you think about it. I mean, exactly. 1% of this fan base, even if they are stirring things up, is still a big amount of people. So it's something that this team is navigating that really no other team in the WNBA has to. But at the same time, I've kind of caught myself wondering, like, should I just be deleting Twitter, or should I be staying off Twitter more than I'm used to? It's a great tool to communicate from a broadcaster's perspective. I don't even think I'm answering your question, but it's just kind of my general thoughts on the subject are: we are so fortunate to have this spotlight. We are so fortunate to have this fan base. I can't tell you how many people come up or tweet or email, or it's just so overwhelming in some ways to get to be a part of it. So my overall feedback on it is just immense gratitude. But there's no question that there is a noise factor at play. Caitlin has spoken to it numerous times that this team has to continue to overcome. A lot of that comes with being, the Dallas Cowboys and the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, that comes with being teams like that as well. And as Caitlin Clark has continually said, those are not the type of things that help her and help this team. So if you truly are a fan of her and this team, that's not doing, positive things for this team, but it's there. I can't say I've ever quite experienced anything like it, but this whole ride has been unlike anything I've ever experienced. And, staying mentally focused is a massive key for any athlete, and avoiding distraction. And I think that is more important for the 2026 members of the Indiana Fever, players, coaching staff, front office. I think that's more important for this group than any other WNBA team, certainly, and right up there with any professional team in North American sports.
Very well said, Pat, and I totally agree with you. I think you've contextualized it really well, because there is no answer to the question. There's just perspective that we have to find our way through the mud and the vitriol and all of the nonsense that's going on, it is new ground for the WNBA. I know you've been generous with your time. My final comment would be the only red flag I see in Caitlin Clark's ascendancy is something that I've seen happen to a number of other athletes, and that is the brand building and the voices all around her, pulling her into all of these opportunities. That can be something that I believe can erode into a distraction. I don't think she'll fall into that, but it's just a red flag to me. And they're going to try to do the same thing. In fact, they are doing the same thing with Wemby in the NBA. Is everybody's going to try to build him into a brand, a brand monolithic creation. And so that's another part of the modern athlete that's very, very unique. So she has been magnificent, like you said, and I hope she continues to evolve into the player that she deserves to be, because she will be an all-time great, if not the all-time greatest in the WNBA. And what she's done for the league and for the sport, you can't even contextualize, because there are just very few athletes in the history of sport that have impacted their particular sport the way she has.
No argument there. I think she's got a great small circle. I'm nowhere near it, nor should I be. So I can't necessarily speak to it specifically, but I think she's got a great close-knit inner circle, and I think that's vital. And I think she's had relationships, and she continues to grow relationships with look, there's no WNBA parallel here. There's nobody for her to go to in the WNBA over the course of time and say, hey, how did you handle this? Now, that's not to say she can't go to Tamika Catchings, who's in her own building, to Sue Bird, to Diana Taurasi, to whomever, and take advice and get good advice. Of course. But there's
Cheryl
nobody
Miller
that's experiencing this that has ever donned a WNBA jersey. So she has, I think, done a great job of cultivating relationships and friendships with people on the NBA level. Frankly, Tyrese Halliburton hasn't experienced what she has, but she has, formed a good relationship with Tyrese, which I think is helpful because he's also right under this roof. But LeBron James and Steph Curry, I think, are two people that have experienced a lot of what she has and have done a good job navigating it, and are people that, she has a relationship with. And I think that's very, very good for her to be able to find other people, because there's not many that have experienced all of this attention. And I think you're right. I mean, even today versus 10 years ago versus when LeBron James started, who was, as big of an athlete to come out maybe as there ever has been. But in today's era, there's more people pulling at you, and they have different ways to pull at you. So I think she's phenomenal. A comparison that I hear here, and I was not I was in elementary school and middle school and high school when this athlete was here, but for people that I know that have worked with him or have been in his general vicinity or bubble, Peyton Manning is the name I hear get tossed around a lot locally, and how good Peyton was with all of that, from the media to sponsorships to compartmentalizing to all of that. And the thing I've heard multiple times from numerous people that know both of these two athletes, and I'm speaking, of course, Peyton Manning is also played for the Colts in Indianapolis for a long time. Right. But so many people make that comparison, and I think it's a really good one, because he's one of the greatest at it. And, another person that she has to bounce ideas and thoughts off of. I can't imagine it. I truly can't imagine being in her spot. She has so many blessings from this, but so many challenges that you or I don't have to face. I can't imagine it, but she, at least so far, is as good as anybody that I've ever been around. And even for those who I haven't been around, which is most of major athletes, I think she's right up there with the very best of them. And I'm confident that she'll continue to navigate these waters, albeit, at times understanding that they're going to be choppy. I just think she is built for this on the floor and off the floor. And it's so rare you get that combination of skill sets.
100%. She is the person that has been placed here to take on this mantle and I think is just blazing such a path for the league, for women in sports at so many different levels. So yeah, I think you articulated it wonderfully. Pat, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. It's great to catch up with you. Excited to see the season continue to unfold for the Fever. I wish you all the best and look forward to catching up with you in the near future.
Admittedly, a little disappointed because it hit me at some point in this interview that when we were talking at this time last year, we were talking about Pacers NBA Finals. So admittedly, a little disappointed to not get to talk Pacers Finals with you this go around. But
yeah, I know. Melancholy. But maybe next year you got your guy back and some new additions. So maybe next year we'll be having that conversation. I hope so.
I sure hope so as well. Thanks, Paul, for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Pat. Pat Boylan, voice of the Indiana Fever and the Indiana Pacers, joining me on Hoop City with Paul Sir on the Deep Dive. Man, oh man, I hate to even start talking, Declan. I just want to listen to that song. Got to Give It Up by Marvin Gaye on our Marvin Gaye morning. Just such a fascinating guy who tragically died at the hand of his father, actually, in the late 70s. There was a dispute over money, and his father shot him in the chest, if you can believe that. But he also was a great sports fan and was able to wrangle a tryout with the Detroit Lions and almost made the Detroit Lions as a receiver without any formal football experience at all. But that was how athletic Marvin Gaye was. And spend the time, develop a playlist on Marvin Gaye. You'll always be glad you did. Just the voice of soul from that particular era. As we wrap things up, Declan, Pat Boylan is so passionate about the Indiana Pacers and the Indiana Fever, as he should be. He's their voice on their play-by-play on their radio. But it's certainly abundantly clear in listening to Pat's comments that the Fever have had an uneven season. He puts it in a context, though, that I think adds a great perspective for what even a professional franchise has to go through to get their players to fit together, develop their team chemistry, and start realizing their potential as a team.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like you look at the Fever team specifically, they're in such a funny spot because on one hand you have, of course, this is competitive sports. We are playing for W's and L's. We are playing for championships. And then on the other hand, it's like we have this grandiose gold coin commodity that we also need to maximize every step of the way, really, for marketing, tickets, gate, etc. So it puts that franchise in a really unique spot, obviously because the WNBA is a little less established, not profitable, all those things like that factors in. And then you have to balance that with no, we still got to go out there and compete for championships because this is pro sports and it is about wins and losses.
100%. And you also have the very real player dynamics. Mm-hmm. Like you have a player like Kelsey Mitchell, just scored her 5,000th point in the WNBA, an established star, an elite scorer, playing alongside another star in Caitlin Clark, who also is a high usage ball dominant player. And quite honestly, not only is she at her best when she has the ball in her hands more often than not, but the other players, including Kelsey, are at their best because she's such a great passer. Having said that, Kelsey is used to, in the way that she has scored her 5,000 point, is to be the person with the ball in her hands more of the time. And I don't care if you're a male or a female player, it doesn't matter. When you have to adapt your style that you've been extremely successful with, and you have to play together with someone who also is extremely good. And let's look at Luka and LeBron and Austin Reeves and the dynamic with the Lakers. This is not atypical. This is not unheard of in sports. So there is an adapting process that is continuing to be ongoing with the Fever, but they seem to be starting to figure it out, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely they do. And you look at, just the entire makeup of the team, and you look at some of the, players you bring in and some of the like kind of, I guess, systems you put in and how it just maximizes things. And yeah, I can't add more to the conversation that you haven't already said. And yeah. No.
Well, and Aaliyah Boston is becoming a great player in her own right. Like, it's the first time, I think, in WNBA history that 2 WNBA players had 30-plus points and had double-doubles. Yep. Clark and Boston the other night. I think, though, when you look at what Stephanie White has done as a coach, she's struggling too to try to figure this out. She's overcompensated in some ways. I think trying to mindfully diminish the impact and spotlight that Caitlin Clark brings to herself and then consequently to the team, that certainly seems to be a part of this equation that's still a work in progress, certainly. But great having Pat Boylan on. And I'm excited when we come back in the fall to have Pat on as well with a healthy, hopefully, Tyrese Halliburton, the additions that they made in trades, whoever they get in the draft, that the Pacers, after their horrific season, after their unbelievable, unexpected season the year before, being in the NBA Finals, taking OKC to 7 games, and then absolutely having the bottom fall out this past season. It'll be great to have Pat back on. Let's jump back to the NBA Game 5 that we're going to be watching later today. All right, we touched on this in an earlier segment, Declan, but one of the things in sport that after you have a devastating loss, or what could perceive to the outsider as a devastating loss, like the Spurs absolutely had the other night, one of the factors that can creep in, and we watched it with the Cavaliers when they blew a 22-point fourth quarter lead in game 1 of that series against the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Championship. They were never able to get over the hump. Even though they would come out with a brave face, they would go up early on the Knicks. You just knew over time this was going to fade. Now, the Cavaliers are not the Spurs in terms of talent and certainly in terms of constitution, if you want to use that word. Do you think this young Spurs team, is this where youth could serve them well, Declan, from the standpoint of you don't know what you don't know? That they're able to just go, oh, yeah, that was then, but this is now. Let's just get back out there. We're really good. Let's go show the Knicks that we're better than them in our home court. Do you think that the Spurs are capable of that?
You know, it's funny because you talk about you don't know what you don't know, and I almost feel like with this Spurs team, I do know. I do know now because I've seen it game and game again in the biggest spot in the NBA Finals. And it's something, we talked about JJ Redick a little bit earlier in the show, and JJ Redick had a very famous interview, he had an interview he did where he talked about one of those years at Duke where they lost in the Final Four and Coach K sat him down and said, we didn't win because you weren't ready to be a champion. And I think you can point to some of these young players on the Spurs, or even if you want to say just some of these players, period, not necessarily the young guys, and say they are not going to win because these guys are not ready to be champions. And I think that's what it comes down to. The youth and inexperience is obviously in large part to it. The talent is there, no question. But sometimes you have to go through these things before you can get to the top of the mountain. And I think this is just, it's been and will continue to be and will finish as a learning experience for the San Antonio Spurs team.
That was very well put. I really liked what you just said. I'm just going to amend.
Well, Coach K said it. I just repeated.
Well, but the fact that you referred to Coach K, I think applies directly to the Spurs about not being ready. Wemby wasn't ready for the moment when he threw the bad pass into Castle's back. The other night, the whole team wasn't ready for the second half, while the Knicks were relentlessly ready and persistently executing play after play on both ends of the court to put themselves in a position that if they just believed and they went play by play, you don't know what can happen because they could already draw on. It did happen against the Cleveland Cavaliers not just 2 weeks ago. So, you're absolutely right. The only word I would amend is not sometimes, but most times you're not ready to be a champion. Mm-hmm. De'Aaron Fox the other night, again, late 20s, had been to a Game 7 in a Western Conference final when he was with Sacramento. He should be the guy most likely to calm things down and to make the right decisions and plays. Clearly, he was not ready for that. And in fact, nobody on the Spurs was ready for the second half the other night. They all made inexcusable bad plays. And not only did they brush them off, which to a certain extent you have to do, but they were flippant about it, and they kept taking contested, out of rhythm, bad three-pointers. The over-reliance on the three-pointer is actually kind of my final point about what it takes to win in the NBA today. Because as Pat Boylan pointed out correctly, 10 years ago, you did not see 20-point comebacks hardly ever. You see them once a year, once every 2 years. Now it's becoming more and more commonplace, excuse me, but a lot of that has to do with pace of play and over-reliance on taking three-pointers early in the shot clock because of the idiots that are called, that run the analytics that tell coaches, this is, how you play basketball. You play by the numbers. No, you don't play by the numbers. Numbers are snapshots. They're not strategies. And when you make numbers strategies and you make odds and ratios strategies, you take out reading the room and where you're at in a particular game. The other night, there were so many times when San Antonio should have come out, run a horn set, run a flex set, get Wemby into the low block, run a screen and roll, get him low, get the team engaged, get them making layups, get them to the free throw line instead of just passing the ball on perimeter and standing watching and chucking up a three. So to win in the modern era, you have to go away from possession-based pace of play and integrate various styles into the play. So it'll be interesting to see tonight, number one, how will the Spurs react and meet the challenge? And equally on the other side, same with the Knicks. How are they going to come? Are they going to come out and try to establish themselves early? Or are they going to shadow box as they've been doing really as we've been going through this series? They've allowed the Spurs to go up big early and then find their way to inch their way back into the game. And for the Spurs, especially when they go to their bench, to start to flutter. It's interesting, Declan. Luke Cornett is a really good basketball player. But man, oh man, when he comes in, the other team just is able to score so routinely. And this is with a good basketball player on the court.
Yeah, if you look at what he did with the Celtics, and he was a key piece.
Absolutely. It
felt like, which is why he was brought over here. Then he gets in, and the net rating stuff just plummets. He is in a tough situation as well, because it's like when you're used to going at Victor Wembanyama for 38 minutes and then Luke Cornett comes in for the other 10, like it's things are a little bit different there. So he's up against it in that sense, and he is a good player. It's just it's been rough for him,
and he probably has probably has the best play of the playoffs.
Yes,
with the block in the previous series. Like it's an incredible. Like you said, he's a good player, but he's not Victor Wembanyama. I think Wemby will eventually become the best player in the world if he stays healthy. It concerns me, not just because of how slender he is, because he is bulking up as he gets older, but what concerns me the most, Declan, is how much he falls. He's on the ground so much in a game. That can't be good at his size. But regardless of that, 6:30 tonight here in Mountain Time, you're going to be watching Game 5, Spurs hanging on, trying to keep the series alive. Knicks looking to close it out for their first championship since 1973. It's going to be a great evening of basketball. At this time every week, the song in the background comes on, and it's my son Ben with his band, Worst Days Down, in his tribute to his friend and our family's friend, David Finkelman, whose life ended far too soon due to an irresponsible driver at a crosswalk. And my son Ben lost his life in his battle with trauma and addiction over 3 years ago. Through all those struggles, though, my son Ben was always kind to other people and always reached out, oftentimes to the people that needed the most compassion, who were struggling the most in life. And I always try to remind everybody at this time every week, make sure you take the time for the people that are important in your life, that you tell them that they're important, that you love them, and always be kind to your fellow person that you meet on the streets. You never know what they're going through. We aren't walking a mile in other people's shoes, but be kind to those who are most vulnerable and be compassionate as well. And think the best of other folks as well. Declan, thank you so much. This has been a hoot. Really have enjoyed this today.
I've loved it, Paul. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the beautiful send-off message.
You are welcome. Well, everybody, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. It's going to be beautiful. It looks like the torrential rains the monsoons are going to return next week again, but you got a beautiful weekend. Head over to Expo Center. Celebrate with the Filipino community as they have exhibits, food trucks, and entertainment going on leading up to the game tonight between Scarborough. Start time, I believe, is 7 o'clock at Expo. Doug McLean, Mark Michaud will be carrying the call on CBC Gem. Always a great listen if you can't make the game, but get over there. And then tomorrow night, the Philippine University of Manila against the Legacy All-Stars. In the meanwhile, thank you for spending your time with us today. It's been a great show and a great time. Have a great week on and off the court. This is Hoop City with Paul Sir on your sports leader, Sports 1440.
Legacy Heating and Cooling is serious about cooling. In fact, we offer multiple ways to cool your home. So you better
call Legacy. Call Legacy.
If you're looking for traditional air conditioning, we got you.
Call Legacy. Call Legacy.
Or ask us about a heat pump to help you heat and cool.
Call Legacy. Call Legacy.
Cool with AC or cool with a heat pump. Cool your home with Legacy Heating and Cooling.
All the protection you want, none of the weight. Introducing Timberland Pro's Boondock Ultra Light Work Boots, the lightest Boondock yet, with the Timberland durability you expect. Conquer long shifts, move faster, and work safer with all-day comfort in a lightweight package. Find your Boondock Ultralights now at all 3 of our Edmonton job site workwear locations and online at jobsiteworkwear.ca.
Job site workwear, tough gear for tough jobs.